It's rapid fire time. That's all anybody needs to know. It's rapid fire time.
Love it. I'm ready. It's been a minute since I've done some rapid fire. Let's get after it.
All right. Sounds good. We've got more comments from Marcus Freeman, Jeremiyah Love, and Leonard Moore after last week's New York TV media blitz. Marcus Freeman was asked on SportsCenter what more Jeremiyah Love can do this year. And here's what he said.
He can do a lot. We have to be careful of asking him to do too much because there's a lot he can do. He's even told me he can play a little bit of defense, but I don't know if we're going to do that. But our job is to find as many ways possible to get the ball in his hands. This game is about putting your best players in a position to succeed. And we know Jeremiyah Love is one of our most talented football players, so we have to make sure we put him in a position to succeed, but also don't overutilize him. You know, we don't want to have diminishing results.
Trevor, I thought that last sentence was pretty telling about not overutilizing him and diminishing results. What's that tell you?
Yeah, I think it's a direct reflection on what happened in the postseason last year. And Jeremiyah Love was banged up, and I mean, even with the flu and a banged up knee, he still went for 98 yards to the house against Indiana in the first playoff game. But then after that, kind of got re-hurt and wasn't as big of a factor against Georgia and then against Ohio State. Ohio State for different reasons. It's tough to run inside zone when you're down 31-7 at one point in the game. So I get that. But for him, it's about health in the postseason. And it's weighing the options of, okay, are we handing him off the ball in the third quarter against Stanford and against Purdue and Navy, or are we going to kind of rest him up, especially with the stable of running backs that they have? So yeah, I definitely think it's telling that it's all hands on deck to make sure that he's good to go for whatever postseason run is in store for him.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the approach, because like you hear Marcus Freeman say that, and we know that when Jeremiyah Love was recruited, that was part of the recruiting process, that like talking to, like his mom and his family and to him, obviously, that, that they weren't going to, give him 300 carries a season and just, like over 300 is obviously an exaggeration, but you know what I'm saying? Like Ashton Genty was 250 or something like that, I think, last year. Like it was up there pretty good, and they weren't going to overload him like that, because this is a guy who obviously has not just Heisman potential, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but obviously NFL aspirations, and there are only so many carries that these guys really want to have to put on their bodies, their legs in a season. When you've got another horse like Jadarian Price, that's quite a luxury to have, and so I don't think that they do have to overload him, as like the diminishing results like Marcus Freeman talked about. And hey, if you're a team that has playoff aspirations once again, which they do, now know you sort of have to be able to plan for that as the season goes on and split some of those reps. And when you've got guys like Aeneas Williams and Kedron, Young and those kind of guys, you don't have to. And you've got Jabron Payne coming back this year as well. You don't have to put too much of the burden on him, and I think that that's nothing but a good thing for. And the other aspect of it is, if you get up in some games like you did last year, like those guys obviously just need to be out of the game right away, because you have those young studs and you can let them go to work as well.
Yeah, I think to your point, it's definitely going to be a week-to-week type of deal. Obviously Jeremiyah Love is probably going to have to touch the ball a little bit more times against, Miami and Texas A&M and USC, potentially Pitt on the road, than he will maybe against Stanford or a Purdue or Navy if the game ends up like it did last season. But to put some numbers behind it, Jeremiyah Love, between rushing attempts and receptions, averaged like 11.9 touches a game. But mind you, that also includes the postseason where he only carried the ball 4 times against Ohio State and only 6 times against Georgia. So, I think it's finding some sort of balance with him.
Do you think he was underutilized at all last year?
In aspects of the offense, I would say. In terms of rushing touches a game, I think it's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw a little bit of what I was talking about, last year. I mean, against Georgia Tech, he touched it 14 times. Against Texas A&M, he carried the ball 14 times. So against their better opponents like USC, touched the ball 13 times, rushed it 13 times in the first half. So it kind of depends. I think he was underutilized in the pass game, something that I think is going to change this upcoming year.
Exactly. That's the area where I think you can get him involved more, get him the ball in space and let him use that speed and athleticism. And also by doing so, he doesn't have to take the kind of hits that he would take between the tackles when you get him the ball out there on the perimeter someplace, which, like, for the second spring, we saw him out there running pass routes and doing that kind of stuff. So it feels like it's there, and that'll be the plan. Again, when you've got so much other talent in that backfield, it gives you, a lot of luxuries to do some different stuff. So we've all been just waiting and waiting and waiting for more 21 type personnel, backs and all that kind of thing. Will we finally see it this year?
I think so.
My fingers are crossed. So how about Love himself? Here's what he said when he was asked about Heisman Trophy expectations going into the season.
I try to just keep the noise, just the noise. I try not to pay attention to a lot of things that people say, primarily because people's opinions can change just like that. All that really matters at the end of the day is, how I perform, how I see myself doing. So when it comes to, other people saying things, I try not to pay attention. It's nice to see here and there, but I don't want to get no big head. I don't want to, think of myself, as cocky or like I'm just better than everybody. I still got, things that I got to grow in. I'm still, growing as a person, as a player. So, I try to just keep all of that, away from my head and just try to be in my own headspace and just focusing on the right things and, not just focusing on what other people are saying.
Yeah.
And, that's what I try to do.
So, I mean, you hear Jeremiyah Love, and I watched that segment. I watched all these segments, I guess, but I watched that, and I was kind of looking for the expression on Jeremiyah Love's face when Heisman Trophy was asked, and he never cracked a grin, broke a big smile. Like, the expression stayed just flat, unchanged. And I think that says as much as anything that he just said there, like when you talk about it, because I think you could definitely fall prey to like the Heisman expectation and the hype going into the season. It feels like he's in a good headspace with all this, though. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything different from a kid like Jeremiyah Love. Look, at the end of the day, he, along with the rest of the team, embodies what Marcus Freeman preaches all the time, and it's team glory. And Marcus Freeman talks all the time about how you get individual glory through team glory. And obviously there's going to be some people that get highlighted for some performances. And then in some scenarios, they get too much of the blame if something doesn't go the right way. I mean, if anybody needs a reminder, all the feedback that Riley Leonard was getting after the Northern Illinois loss. So it goes both ways. True. It's definitely a double-edged sword. But, I think with Jeremiyah Love, I don't think that his answer was, I don't think it was a rehearsed type of answer. I think he truly believes. Yeah, I think it's just one of those situations where he believes that if he performs to the best of his capabilities and does his part in getting Notre Dame to the stage that they should be back at this year, then being in the Heisman discussion and all of these personal accolades are just going to be somewhat of a byproduct of putting team mentality first. And so, no, his comment doesn't surprise me at all, man. It was great.
Yeah, because he was also asked about his expectations for the season, and his answer was, "I'm just trying to be better than last year." And that's kind of scary when you think about it. And I think that's why there are so many, why there is so much Heisman hype and stuff like that. Because let's face it, like if you did a highlight package of the college football playoff last year, Love's got probably 2 of the top 10 highlights that are going to be in that reel, with the 98-yard run against Indiana and the 2-yard run against Penn State. And like when those play over and over and over again, it's like he's an obvious. It's been a long time. It's been 10 years since Derrick Henry won the Heisman, the last running back to win the Heisman Trophy. It's hard for a running back to win the Heisman Trophy, but when you've got a guy with the skills that Jeremiyah Love has, it's easy to see why he's at least in that conversation coming into this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can make the argument his most impressive run of the season was 2 yards long.
Yeah,
Penn State. I mean, that was just,
especially when you consider where his knee was at that point in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I think he brought up a really good point in that interview as well. It's like you can kind of lose love. I mean, no pun intended, but you can kind of lose all of the love and attention that you're getting as quickly as you gain it. And I think that's very true of somebody on this Heisman stage. I mean, go back to think of all the previous years where most likely the person who was winning the Heisman Trophy was not the runaway favorite to win it in the preseason.
Right.
And it's almost like people kind of pick apart your game the more attention that you start to get. Little different for a running back. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be an exciting season, no doubt.
I was just thinking about what you said there. I like that.
Thank you.
So Leonard Moore was on the Today Show on Friday as well, and they asked him about playing with epilepsy. Interesting.
I don't necessarily think about it a lot, but I feel like it's something I remind myself of every time I go out in the field because, like, God has blessed me to be in a position to not be affected by epilepsy any longer. So I feel like it's just a good thing to have, just to let me know I can still go out there and have fun and do what I love.
So I guess this is something that's going to come up in this year's Here Come the Irish Peacock series, because, again, we were talking about this yesterday. When they did the Today Show, since it's NBC and Peacock, they took the opportunity to promote the Here Come the Irish on the Peacock streaming platform, which is actually, good idea, good approach. Like get it out there. There's some good stuff in the series last year. But did you know this about Leonard Moore? Had you ever heard this before last week?
No, I didn't. I watched the interview live when it went down, and he brought that up, and I was shocked. I mean, that was not expecting to hear that. That's for sure.
No, not at all. And I think that it kind of gives me a different appreciation for like we all think that Leonard Moore is a great player already anyway, but to know that this is part of his history as well. Like he said, it doesn't really, affect him as much right now, but I know someone, who's had an epileptic seizure before, and it's pretty jarring. I don't know if you've ever seen it in person yourself. It's pretty jarring the first time you see someone go through this.
Yeah. Oh, it is. I mean, the fact that he kind of battled through it, I think it's just a testament to that young man. And it's when you hear stories like that, it's not a surprise why he's able to perform at such a high level the way that he does. And I think when somebody at a young age goes through that, it gives them a little bit of a different perspective moving forward than somebody maybe who hasn't had to go through something like that. And so I don't think it's a surprise at all that he's at now where he's at.
Nope, not at all. Not at all from that aspect. So Marcus Freeman, we've been playing some of the comments from Marcus Freeman's New York Media Blitz last week on ESPN, ABC, and NBC. He got a little fun surprise when he went on College Football Live when Irish DB Isaiah Dunn, who's doing a summer internship at ESPN, popped a question in for him.
Coach, I got one question. It's nothing too crazy. I want you to be honest. Let's say we're in camp, and you have to pick one DB to get a pick. It's a random Tuesday. Who are you picking? Out of all the DBs, be honest, unbiasedly. Who are you picking?
You couldn't come upstairs and ask me this in my office. We got to do this on national TV.
National television.
If there's one guy that I've been with for a couple years now that's doing extraordinary things. His name is Dunn Man in my heart. Isaiah Dunn. I would love to see him have a huge interception on a bloody Tuesday in South Bend.
Coach, I appreciate you, man. It's so good to see you. I'm missing you like crazy.
This is why the recruiting is on fire. You see that answer? That was so.
He had me at Bloody Tuesday. I've got to be honest. I mean, that's just the fact that they call them Bloody Tuesdays. I think I love that. Isaiah Dunn was the guy when we got to see the scrimmage in the indoor at the Irish Athletic Center in the spring. He's the guy who had the interception on Kenny Minchie. So, I mean, it's a quality answer. He came up with an interception that everyone saw, but is Freeman's answer your answer, Trevor Trowbridge?
With all due respect, no. No.
I'm not going to put Isaiah Dunn. I mean, it was a nice answer from the head coach, but yeah.
Yeah, look, man, I love the answer from Marcus Freeman, and this is no shot at Isaiah Dunn, but, game on the line or practice on the line on a bloody Tuesday, if I had to pick a corner to come up with a pick, I mean, I'm probably going one of Christian Gray or Leonard Moore.
I mean, can there be any other answer? I mean, I guess you could say Devontae Smith, but you could throw that one in there. I think most people would probably say Leonard Moore, even though a lot of people conveniently forget that Christian Gray had arguably the two biggest interceptions of last season when he had the pick six against USC first, of course, as part of that little back-to-back with Xavier Watts. But then in the waning moments of the college football playoff semifinal against Penn State, picking off Drew Aller as well. Like, I think you can definitely say he had the number one most important interception. Wouldn't you? Would you call?
Yeah.
Is there one that you would put above the Penn State interception?
No, there's not. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, I don't know if there is a close second than the interception on that stage.
I agree.
You know, I mean, the USC one was great. They were going down to tie. They pick it off, and it helps seal the game. But more impactful than the college football playoff semifinal, which, by the way, was also on their way to hold Penn State's receivers for a whopping total of 0 yards and 0 catches. Just like to remind people of that as well. But no, I don't think there's a more important one than that.
I'm going Leonard Moore, number one. That would be my corner. I mean, safety, it's obviously Adon Schuler right now because we don't know exactly who the safety next to him is going to be. But I think that he's going to have a big year as well. Like carrying from what he did last year. I think he's huge. Got a question in the chat on the YouTube stream, and of course, again, for our radio listeners, you can always watch this show live on YouTube on the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel or the Sports Radio WSBT channel. It streams on both of them live. Tom is asking you specifically, who do you want to see start at quarterback against Miami?
Look, Tom, I appreciate the question, man. And I'm not trying to say this to give a political answer. This is
genuinely. You're going to go with the coach's answer? Is that what you're going to do?
I am.
The coach's answer?
I am going to go with the coach's answer. But I do genuinely mean this. I don't have a preference. I don't. With the ceiling of talent between CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey, I don't have a preference. I believe CJ Carr is going to end up winning the job. You know, I kind of fall in line with the general consensus of other members of Irish Breakdown, people in the media. There's just an assumption that CJ Carr is going to be Notre Dame starting quarterback in 2025. You can file me under that as well. But would it at all surprise me if Kenny Minchey wins the job? No. And would I be disappointed if Kenny Minchey wins the job? No. I think both of these kids have a very high ceiling. And it's almost to the point where, look, we think extremely high of CJ Carr. If Kenny Minchey wins the job in fall camp, what does that say about his performance?
It means it's through the roof.
Exactly. And so I know it comes off as like the coach's answer, the political answer, but genuinely, I don't have a preference. I'll be honest. In other years, I had a preference of who I wanted to see be the quarterback. But this year, truly, if CJ Carr wins it, I'm happy. Let's ride. If Kenny Minchey wins it, let's go. Let's ride. As long as whoever wins the job isn't because the other person just performed that poorly. Like the other person has to go out and win the job, not necessarily just be the lesser of two bad performances in fall camp. And I don't think that's going to happen. And so that's where I'm at with it.
Brian says because you think he's better, it's okay to say that. And it is okay to say that. We are allowed to have an opinion on who it's going to be, on who we think is the better quarterback. That doesn't mean that you favor one or the other based on the eyeball test, what we have been able to see. And I think with CJ Carr, it's not just this spring, but last spring as well. And the fact that he built on that true freshman where he would have been a senior in high school spring based on what we saw from him this spring. Does that mean he was perfect? No, of course he wasn't perfect. No quarterback is ever going to be perfect. Brett Favre threw 1 million interceptions in his career. He still wears a gold jacket, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Tom Brady threw some interceptions as well. Go down the list. There's not an NFL Hall of Fame quarterback who didn't throw an interception. Guys who won Super Bowls and national championships in college as well. You know, he was not perfect in the spring. I think he's going to win the job, but at the end of the day, the guy that you want to win the job is the guy who is the best guy for the job. Like, that's how I look at it. Like, so I think it's going to be CJ Carr, but if it's Kenny Minchey, as you said, it's because Kenny Minchey had a great spring or a great fall and outplayed CJ Carr, and he won the job. I've got no problem with that. None at all.
Yeah, 100%.
So there's a game that we like to play here, that we've been doing this summer where we guess what the FanDuel season over-under win total is for different college football teams. So what we do, we go through the schedule of the team, and then without looking at what that over-under line is, we try to guess what it's going to be.
Okay.
So I think this is the first time that you've been here this summer and done this with us. So that's the game we're going to play. We're going to do it for Colorado today. Thought it would be fun, Colorado. They've got a lot of questions, Dion, after the season that they had last year. So here's the Colorado schedule. They start off with Georgia Tech. Not an easy game by any means.
Okay.
So I'm calling that a maybe game for Colorado. Delaware, if they can't beat Delaware, there's going to be a lot of trouble for the Buffs this season. Houston, they're at Houston. Then they have Wyoming. Then they have BYU. They're at TCU. They've got Iowa State, at Utah, Arizona, at West Virginia, Arizona State, at Kansas State. Now, I realize that's not necessarily a murderer's row, but like for Colorado, that is not an easy schedule by any means because they basically have all four Big 12, like going into the season, the four, maybe even five Big 12 championship contenders: Kansas State, Arizona State, Utah, Iowa State, and then I'd probably put BYU after them. But don't overlook the Jayhawks with Jalen Daniels coming back this year if he stays healthy. I'll just throw that out there. Right now. You saw the schedule.
I did.
What do you think their FanDuel over-under is, Trevor?
Look, this may be unpopular. I'm going to go 5.5 because Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter bailed them out of a lot of sticky situations last year.
Mm-hmm.
And college football, it comes down to a very simple factor of can you run the ball and stop the run? And even with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter last year, they couldn't do that. And based on their schedule, Arizona State, Kansas State, I think Utah's going to have a bounce back year. TCU's poised for a decent year. Iowa State's going to be a good program. And then look, opening the season against Georgia Tech as a program that kind of feasts on running the football with Haynes King and Jamal Haynes coming back. Yeah. I think Colorado, unless they get something figured out, that's going to be real tough for them. So I'm putting them at 5.5.
I'm 5.5 or 6.5. That's what I'm debating right now as I go through this whole, like a lot of people are picking Utah to win the conference this year. And, so again, you've got Iowa State, one of the fashionable preseason teams. You've got Kansas State, the defending champ, Arizona State. That's 4 losses, I think, right there. I don't think they beat any of those teams. BYU, I don't think they beat 5, 6. I think I'm going to go 5.5 as well. Like I said, I'm debating 5.5 or 6.5. I'm going to go 5.5 as well. I think it's going to be on the lower side for Colorado, considering all the turnover that they got, losing Shedeur, losing Travis Hunter, and they're just not built that well in the trenches, to your point of what you were talking about. I think that they can be bullied, and when they don't have that elite high-end talent like those two guys to bail them out, I think that could be a long year.
Yep.
Colorado. So you're locked in at 5.5?
I am.
I'm locked in at 5.5 as well. I've got the app open. Let me see if I can find the Colorado Buffaloes. There they are. It is 5.5.
Bang.
We got it. Nailed it. First try. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I was on a show with Sean Davis, and I think he even made the joke of saying, of course, the year after Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter leaves is going to be the year where they figure out how to run the ball and protect the quarterback. And,
Exactly. All right, we're going to wrap it up with this tonight because we are both Quentin Tarantino fans, at least to some degree. Start, bench, cut. I've got 3 Tarantino movies for you. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Pulp Fiction, Inglourious Bastards.
Oh, that's tough.
To me, these might be the 3 best.
Yeah, that's tough. That's really tough. See, now I'm nervous. My dad's watching, and he's the one that got me into Tarantino movies, and I feel like if I answer this the wrong way, I'm not going to have a place
What would his
to stay
answer?
when I
Would
go
his
up
be
to
Pulp? Would his be Pulp?
I think he would buy Pulp.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to start Inglourious Bastards. I think that's my favorite movie. I love that movie. I have a poster of it in my living room.
I think the last time you were on the show with me, we talked about it, and it's been a few months, but since then, because I've got like on my DirecTV, I've got the premium channel. Like it has been on a loop for, I think, the past 3 months since probably the last time we were on a show together.
Yeah, that movie is one of, if not my favorite movie of all time. And so I would start Inglourious Bastards. This one's tough. I think I'm going to bench Pulp Fiction. That movie is fantastic. Dialogue in that movie is great. It's a very quotable movie. And then I guess since I have to cut one of them, I would cut Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't love doing it because I really like that movie. Either,
but you got to make a choice here, right?
Yeah. I mean, that one's tough. I mean, if Django Unchained was in the mix, that would be tough. I mean, there are so many good ones. Good Lord.
Brian NY saying Django. Chief Brody says Once Upon a Time is so slept on. It is. And like, I realize some people kind of got, like, some of the critics of it, of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, got hung up on, obviously you're rewriting history to an extent, which he did in Inglourious Bastards, obviously, as well. But between the dialogue, the driving, and the music, like that movie just flows from start to finish for me, which is why it's so tough to cut it. I do have to put it on the cut list, and I'm just flip-flopping my others. These are, like I said, my 3 favorite Tarantino movies. Archer is asking no Kill Bill, no Django. I mean, they can't all be on the list. You can only have 3 if you're doing start, bench, cut. Kill Bill, I went back and watched, volume 1. The problem with that is both of the Kill Bill movies just drag at some point. They're a little bit long for my liking, but there's a lot of great stuff in there. But Pulp is like, I still remember my wife and I, when we were in college, saw it at this little art house theater when it first came out, and just coming out with like this sense of vertigo, like trying to figure out like what just hold it. How was John Travolta still alive at the end? What just happened there? Like that whole thing, and rewatching it over and over again. They're absolutely, like, that is the movie that I quote the most, the absolute most. I don't quote Inglourious Bastards quite as much, but it is another great. You can argue that might be, as he says at the end, this might be my masterpiece. As it said at the end, that might be his true masterpiece. But I still have to put Pulp at the top of the mountain. So I'm starting Pulp. I'm benching Inglourious Bastards, and unfortunately, I have to cut Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I understand. It's a tough cut.
It is. All right. That's going to do it for today. Trevor, enjoyed it as always. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely.